Hello, my name is Dennis van Bodegom. I'm Regional Director at Shippeo, and today I'd like to discuss the topic of where's my stuff, when will it arrive, and why should I care? Very quick introduction on myself and Shippeo. We are a software company focusing on real-time visibility and answering the questions I actually just mentioned. So where's my stuff, when will it arrive? And so let's take a look at what's happening today. Just you and me, right? As a consumer, we're actually quite spoiled, right? If we order a taxi or food or any goods, we know exactly where it is and when it will arrive, and never a question when it should be at our doorstep and whether we should be home or when we can go out for some shopping. Quite convenient, and strange though that if we take a look at business to business today, that we're shipping tons of goods with high value, but we really don't have a clue where the goods are and when they will arrive. So despite the fact that we're spoiled as a consumer, in business to business we often see that it's not so common to actually have real live tracking and visibility of your goods and your products. So we could say that from the experience as a consumer, we would expect a similar experience in our business to business environment. So we could say that a business to business customer is like a business to consumer party, or driven by a need for service and transparency. There's not much difference between the two, apart from the fact that there's a lot more at stake at a business than it is as a consumer. Now the interesting thing is that if we take a look at what's currently happening in the business to business market, most of the goods that we're shipping, we know afterwards where they were. So we have visibility on the last known location, and when a driver comes back after a long day of dropping goods and bringing stuff to different companies, he puts his cradle into the into the docking, and all the data is being synchronized with the system if possible. But it means that afterwards you only get information about what actually happened during the day. While in reality, you would like to know what's actually happening now. If a truck is late now, what can I anticipate? Is there something that I could prevent? Is there something else that I can do in order to preempt the risks or the problems that I could anticipate based on the fact that I've got real-time information at this very moment? Real-time visibility, though, is just a first step. Actually, where you would like to get to is predictive visibility. An environment where systems or alerts are being sent based on something that we expect is going to happen next. And you know what? If you can predict with certainty, you can start automating. Just imagine that you know for sure that a truck is going to arrive late at your warehouse. If that's a certainty, then you can start anticipating and planning better in order to get a better efficiency at your warehouse, better efficiency with your teams, etc. So coming from a reactive supply chain to a real-time supply chain to a predictive supply chain is actually the journey we're on. And the journey started about, perhaps even 10 years ago, but as the market evolves and develops, we see that there is today a lot more possible than it was about 10 years ago. Now what's interesting, if we're talking about supply chain visibility and supply chain initiatives, one of those reports that was done by Gartner, I think it was 2018, they did a survey under all sorts of companies, primarily product-focused companies. And as you can see on this chart, many of these companies, the first thing they wanted to invest in, on the right-hand side of the slide, you see that they want to invest in visibility. They want to see what's going to happen, they want to understand, they want transparency on what's actually happening with their goods in the supply chain, inbound, outbound, etc. Now if you go down this list, you'll find a few other items that directly relate to the same visibility. Think about analytics, about BI, about a better grip on stock levels, etc. And customer satisfaction always being an element that's really important for companies. Now we have these developments on one hand and the intended initiatives on one hand, but PwC did a survey among product-centric companies, and they found out, and they called them the digital champions. They were investing in digital visibility, in a digital supply chain. And they found that about the majority of these digital champions would generate 8% extra turnover compared to the less digitally mature companies. 8% extra. On top, they would reduce their cost by about 7%. So there's a double advantage for companies that have invested in supply chain and get a better grip on their supply chain operations. So there's a lot to say about investing in supply chain visibility, and I think everybody knows because it has been out there. Moving supply chain management from a pure cost center to an area of strategic importance and value for your company is a mind shift that happened over the past perhaps 10 years, but where do we start and how do we invest? What's the best angle to get started? Well, another survey, this one's by Gartner, and it was a report from last year where they said that about 50% of the global product-centric companies will have invested in real-time visibility, in visibility platforms by 2023. So within 2 years, 50% of these product-centric companies will have a transportation visibility platform. It raises the question, by which 50% will you belong to? The one that has invested or the ones that still need to invest and see their competition pick up on the topic? Now, one of the companies that invested in transportation visibility not so long ago is a Belgian company and a very well-known retailer, Carrefour. Carrefour is, in case you may not know, but Carrefour is a well-known retailer here in Belgium, across Europe, and but a key element of their business in Belgium is that about 90% of the stores is ran by franchisees. And you can imagine that those franchisees would like to know for sure when their products are coming in, because the worst thing that could happen in a shop in retail is empty shelves. So knowing when a truck arrives and being Carrefour, being consistent in your deliveries and predictable in your deliveries is something that you want to cherish, making sure that your franchisees are absolutely happy. Now we have a short interview with Carrefour, which I'd like to take you to, and let's watch this video, this interview with Carrefour, talking about their business, both on their retail side as well as their inbound side. An important remark though, this is not the outbound delivery to their consumers, so this is internal. It's a delivery to the shops, so from the warehouses and the DCs to the shops, and from the port, for instance, to their DCs, so it's their internal deliveries. Let's take a look.
Carrefour Belgium has a very specific position because a huge part of our stores are operated by franchised store owners.
For the supply chain department, on-time arrival of our trucks is a key element of the service that we give to the stores. We have about 450 trips and about 850 store deliveries every day. Without visibility, people get stressed because they do not know when the truck will arrive. So what they start doing then is taking the phone, trying to call other parties, call center, transportation department, other DCs, and they want to know when is my truck going to arrive. And we hope to take away that stress, to give them instant and upfront information.
It's really important to know when the truck will be here, so if we have to wait for an hour for the delivery, then we can make plans for our personnel.
We selected Shippeo amongst quite a lot of other visibility tools, because Shippeo combines the different transport activities out of our different transport platforms in real time, in one platform, easy accessible by the stores. There are three main KPIs we follow with Shippeo. First of all, it's the overall customer satisfaction of the store owner. Secondly, it's also to measure a planned arrival time versus realized arrival time, especially to enhance productivity within the stores. And the third element, which is very important within the transport operation, is the turnaround time of a truck on site, which also is becoming much more visible with the Shippeo tool.
I get updates on my cell phone through SMS or through email when there is a problem with the truck or when it has just left, and I can follow it in real time, so I know when the truck will be here.
We use Shippeo in our DCs. If we know pretty much in advance that there might be a delay in the incoming flow, we can take corrective actions or reschedule the outgoing flows.
De grootste uitdaging van dit depot is uiteraard de korte doorlooptijd tussen inbound en outbound, gekoppeld aan de hoge volumes om deze goed onder controle te krijgen. Wel, de belangrijkste oorzaak is, als ik geen visibiliteit heb op het inbound transport, dat de goederen niet tijdig kunnen verzonden worden naar de winkels. En het gevolg is dat Carrefour geen verkoop heeft en dat uiteindelijk de goederen moeten vernietigd worden, wat dat voor alle partijen dus een slechte zaak is. De belangrijkste benefit voor Shippeo voor mij betekent dat ik real-time kan kijken waar de trucks van de inbound zich bevinden. Ik moet geen gebruik meer maken van e-mailverkeer, communicatie en dergelijke.
We highly recommend the use of Shippeo, not only in our franchised network, but also in our integrated network, because from a supply chain department perspective, we believe strongly that it's giving accurate transport information, which will help you in the stores to be more effective in the reception of the truck and also with the mise en rayon of the goods within your store.
Now, watching this video is what I found very interesting about this element is that they indicated 3 important KPIs as Carrefour. They said we want to keep our franchisees happy. It's really important to have the franchisee satisfaction as high as possible. So that's one of the key reasons to invest and the key things to monitor. The other thing what was mentioned is they want to track the planned versus the realized arrival times. Really important because it's directly linked to the satisfaction of those franchisees. So knowing when it has arrived and when it was actually planned to arrive is really important to measure the on-time in full deliveries to those stores and making sure that it's kept accurate and improved where possible. And the last thing they mentioned was the turnaround time. So how long does it take for a truck to be on site and how fast can it leave? Now just imagine that there is just a few trucks. Most of the stores may have only room for 1 truck to actually deliver their goods. So if there's 2 trucks or 3 trucks even at the same store, it means that there's a queue and you need to wait for your truck to be unloaded. So having a clear view of when they arrive and when they leave is a very good indication to get an efficient turnaround times on site with those stores. It's not only good for the stores, but also really good for the carriers that can save a lot of time and better anticipate. Now the other part was on their DCs, on their distribution centers. They indicated that they would like to align their inbound flows, their inbound trucks, with the outbound. Sometimes there's an outbound truck that needs goods that are coming in with an inbound truck. If you know it's coming late, perhaps 2 hours or 4 hours, you want to send that outbound truck already on its way, not waiting for the inbound truck. Vice versa, if you know it's only 5 minutes out and it's on its way, you can start aligning and synchronizing your trucks and your transportation better, hence saving cost and making a more efficient use of your trucks and of your carriers. Now, in the whole case around Carrefour, there's one important element that really makes the case really interesting, which is the ETA. Now, ETA, you may say, is quite an well accepted and well-known component. If you go to Google Maps, you can get an ETA on your expected arrival time, which is really great, but which is typically accurate. The closer you get, the more accurate it's going to be. But imagine customers of Shippeo may do very long distance transportation, which may include trips from the north of Scandinavia to Spain or Turkey or somewhere else, or from Spain to the UK, etc. And knowing that a truck is going to arrive in time and when it will be there is really important. Now, if you would just take a regular measure, you know, in my own case, if a while ago, our head office is in Paris, I was staying in a hotel, and I had a meeting with a company, with a customer at the south of Paris. And I put in on Google Maps, how long does it take me to get from the north of Paris to the south of Paris to meet this customer? And Google told me it's somewhere between 3 minutes and 2.5 hours. So when do you leave? 30 minutes is probably too short, 2.5 hours is probably too long. The only thing I know is that I don't need to leave 3 hours before the time, but it's not workable. So you need something that's accurate. So what we've done is we've taken not just weather and traffic into account, but also historical patterns, habits perhaps that a carrier may have. If he does a tour and he passes his old birth city, he may stop at a certain spot just to have lunch with his grandmother every Wednesday, and we see a spike every Wednesday that this truck is always stopping at a certain village. You know, so there's a pattern, there's a habit that you want to take into account because it may affect your delivery times. Now, this is a very simple example, but just think about your mandatory driver breaks. If a driver has been driving for 2 hours, he's obliged to stop for 30 minutes or for 45 minutes, and then 2 hours later again. So we know, and we pick up on this pattern, and we see that once he has stopped after this 2 hours for 30 minutes, we know for sure he has to stop 2 hours later for 45 minutes. These stops, these breaks, have obviously a quite significant impact in the timing and the arrival, especially if the long stops arrive. But there's another thing. If you, as we monitor and we know when the truck arrives on site for delivery and for loading, we know how long it takes on average on every single individual site. So typically, if you do your planning, you would say, let's take 1 hour for loading or 1 hour for delivery on average, should be okay. Well, on average that might be right, but if you are always loading for 2 hours because it's a complicated site or complicated yard, it's very difficult to get the goods, it's tedious to get your paperwork done, etc. So it takes 2 hours to get away, and you've planned based on 1 hour, you're always 1 hour late at your next arrival. So by monitoring and having this real-time visibility on what's actually happening, you can say, well, you know, this is always 2 hours loading, let's anticipate this in our planning and feed the real-time visibility data back into our planning systems in order to give a more accurate planning. Same applies for loading and delivery, which gives you a very good view on the whole picture. So this is the ETA, and one of the things that we've been doing is that by taking all these elements into account, there's a very stable, very constant ETA, even 36 hours before arriving, which means that we're about 2 hours off 36 hours before leaving or arriving the site. Just imagine, if you would take a generic routing API from the market, this really goes off. So even 15, 16 hours before arrival, you do not have a very usable indication of the arrival time. Obviously, when you come closer, it's 2 hours or half an hour. Every ETA can calculate and becomes more accurate. But it's one of the elements that is that's driving a predictive and a proactive supply chain. This is just one element of the real-time visibility side of transportation. And you may ask the question, why now? Why would I invest now? Why didn't we do this 10 years ago? And what are the elements that I could use in order to create this visibility? Now, first of all, the technology is constantly changing, and it still is. And what technology has brought over the past 5 to 10 years is it has become significantly easier, especially with cloud and integration capabilities, and the move from EDI to API for those that are technically more up to speed, is a development that's helping this business. EDI over the years has proven to be very reliable and very stable, but also quite expensive and quite cumbersome to implement. One of those surveys showed that about 8% of the relationships between carriers and shippers is using EDI, 8%. Well, whatever the reasons are, there's an alternative. There's an alternative to go through APIs, which are faster and easier to deploy, and it's easier to unlock that information that is with the carrier or with the shipper. And by bringing and tying this information together, as you can see on the slide in the picture, it becomes the central hub of data where the right information is shared at the right moment with the right people. So whether the truck is moving along and we get a GPS signal from the truck itself, from the telematics, or from the Internet of Things, sensors that are out there about door open, door close, temperature, or other elements that are relevant in transportation, we take that information in and we share this back with the relevant stakeholders. And obviously only that information that is allowed to be shared, taking the GDPR into account. So why now is because of technology. APIs, level of maturity with carriers and shippers, so it allows us to share information and bring it to the cloud in a approachable and easy to use environment. So while all these elements are there and we have so many sources of information, the question is, where do I start? Well, one thing we know for sure, that if we move forward and we look ahead at where this market is going, it's quite clear that data and artificial intelligence will be a strong component in how we can use transportation visibility and supply chain visibility in the future. So there's various elements that can be used, whether that's at your store, getting predictable and reliable information as we saw with Carrefour, or at the plant, the factory, or perhaps at your DC in order to predict when the trucks are arriving and be more efficient about things. Make sure you combine trips like the inbound and the outbound truck that can be combined. Why? Because you have the information and you know what you can do, so you can anticipate better. So this whole concept of all the areas where you can start, it typically starts on the foundation of knowing what's happening. Getting the visibility today, so that's your real-time visibility, getting your real-time visibility in place on what's happening now at this very moment. And once you see what happens, you can start investing in the areas where you see there's waste in my supply chain. This is the area where I would like to improve. And building on this real-time visibility, you can build towards predictive visibility. And eventually, when this predictive visibility is there, and there's lots of elements where we can already apply this, but once this predictive visibility is there, we can move to a fully and perfectly run freight transportation and automated supply chain. So in our vision, we believe we're on a journey towards automation, automating the supply chain by providing visibility, allowing you to see what's actually happening today in your supply chain, and automating this together with your partners and your stakeholders, making a strong and resilient supply chain that's ready for the future. That's what I wanted to share in this session. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm very open to hear your questions and get in touch. So do feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.